Hey everybody, it's Kenneth again. Welcome back to the Shoegazer channel, where we talk about effect pedals, exciting music gear, home production and more, all around the beautiful noise and otherworldly soundscapes. If you're a musician, you probably have some favorite music gear. I personally love Reverb, and not just any Reverb, I love this one. This is the Hardwire RV7. It's a digital stereo reverb with two very special modes. One is a gated and the other one is a reversed reverb. This is pretty rare and this one does it like no other reverb. And then there is this amp. This is the Fender Princeton 112 Plus. It's my all-time favorite amp. It has such a lovely clean channel. But we're living in a time where possibilities are just endless. This little buddy here is the Beebo, a touchscreen pedal that has a convolution reverb and an amp simulation that uses impulse responses. Impulse responses are nothing else than audio files, like a WAV file for example, that can capture informations like characteristics of equalization and environments like a room, an amp, or even a digital reverb device. In this video I want to show you how you can record your own impulse responses, and I specifically want to use my DAW Ableton Live and capture my favorite amp sound and my favorite reverb into this little ghost trap here, the Beebo by Poly Effects. This video is very detailed, so I recommend watching it if you really want to know how it works. Let's do this. So I open Ableton Live and I have one audio track here to capture my IRs. First I make sure that in the audio settings I chose my audio interface, which is the Focusrite Scarlett 4i4, and the input signals should be defined like here it's 1 and 2. My sample rate is 48,000 and my buffer size is 256. I could go higher, but usually this works well with all the processing here. I connect my output of the Hardwire RV7, the stereo output, to the signal input 1 and to the input 2. Both have exactly the same input volume. It's important to see that the monitor outputs are 1 and 2, which is also the headphones output here, my playback 1 and 2. That's important to know. Usually you can hear the dry signal, so you have perfect latency-free monitoring. Make sure that you mute this if you can. When I mute this, I don't hear the dry signal anymore. I just hear the wet signal of what's going inside from the effect pedal. We want to capture the reverb signal and not the dry signal, that's all. It's important to have 48,000 sample rate here because Poly has an convolution reverb, so you can use your own impulse responses, and they say it needs to be 48k hertz and 3.5 seconds max. We will set this up right now, and if you want to use the HX Stomp by Line 6 for example for any cabinet IRs, it's also 48k hertz, 60-bit mono, but here on the supporting website they say there's a mistake. IR saved from Helix to file are encoded as 32-bit floating point WAV files. WAV files is the most important thing because when you render out stuff here in Ableton Live, they will give you AIF files. So I connect a stereo cable, an aux cable to my headphones, output jack, and connect it to the input of the Hardwire RV7, left and right. So I have the stereo signal that goes out from my interface into the Hardwire RV7, and it goes from the output into my audio interface. And from here, I want to record and capture the signal. Max4Live has this convolution reverb, which is able to use IRs to give you some beautiful reverb that you have captured, or you can use stuff that they already recorded for you. Here's an IR measurement device. You just put it here. And if you want to record a stereo IR, use True Stereo. If you record a mono signal, use mono to stereo. We will use the True Stereo here. Leave the amp to minus 20 dB. I just say this because I tried out lots of different settings and it never really worked. It seems to work best with minus 20 dB. And here you can choose the quality of the sweep that you will send through the device. And the sweep is a signal that goes through all the frequencies that the human ear can hear. It will give you the perfect copy of the characteristic that you want to capture here. When I capture my reverse reverb of the Hardwire RV7, I think 2 seconds are enough. It's not longer than 2 seconds. I think it's 1.6 seconds or something like that. And then I send the sweep. But before I do this, I have to arm my track, go to monitor in. Audio is coming from 1 and 2. That's very important because we send in a stereo signal. We have to turn on the Hardwire RV7 stereo reverb. Set it up exactly like we want it because we will capture exactly this characteristic. And so now we are ready. Let's see what happens now. So now you can hear it's getting very, very high. We can't hear this anymore. I can't. If you can, you're probably a bet. Now it's recording the right side. First it was here and now it's on the right side to give you a stereo IR. The Helix can only use mono IRs, so it's totally enough if you just use one of the signals that we get out of this. And the Poly has a mono convolution reverb and also a stereo convolution reverb. Now you see measurement done, that's perfect. We trim and normalize, that's extremely important because it will generate an audio file that is loud enough to be processed, and then we save it. I can save it to the caps if I want, or I can save it to a folder that is called reverbs. I have here tons of different stuff that I got from the internet or that I recorded myself. You can see there's also the MIDI verb 2, and I also try to record the Hardwire RV7, but I will do another one because I figured out that my first attempt to do this was a little bit too quiet. So we have to try another round, and I will just call it reverse. And there I have my reverse reverb. As you can see here, it's an AIF file. We want to have WAV files. So I do another audio file. I call this WAV file maker. Yeah, I go to folders that I have here, samples, IRs, reverbs. So here I have my samples, and as you can see, some of them are AIF files. We just take it, put it in, and here we can see the Hardwire reverse file, and there's nothing in it. You can see it. Editing Kenneth here. Yeah, the problem was that I did hit the normalize button, but I actually turned it off when I did this. So I just increased the volume as much as I could. I limited it so I could see a signal, and in the end I had this. Now we can take this again and make this louder. So I wouldn't make it louder than this. After this point we don't hear anything anymore. I take this off, and now we have a very short clip. I loop this, so I only have this track. This is my impulse response, and I export it. And here, sampling frequency is 48,000. We convert it to mono. Bit depth has to be 32. File type is wave, and we export it. Here is our Hardwire RV7 reverse reverb now. And now I will use the Ableton Live convolution reverb. Max4Live here. Then we go to audio effects. Then we go to convolution reverb. We can use Pro or the simple one. I use the simple one because there are less settings here. So I turn everything off because I want to hear the signal 100% wet. And I choose my Hardwire RV7, and here is my reverse reverb signal. So now I turn this off and I turn on the real effect. Before you try anything, make sure you choose both inputs 1 and 2 because we want to check it on its stereo abilities. This is my clean signal with my whammy bar. So, and now I turn on my Hardwire RV7. This is the effect. I'd love to have this as a file, so this is my convolution reverb. I uploaded the file here, Hardwire RV7. And let's hear it. What I find is that this one sounds really good, but it sounds a little bit thin. The original one. Super thick. What I would do now is I use the spectrum, put it onto my chain here. Okay, we turn this off and now let's check it. So we can see that here is a lot of stuff going on. I use the convolution reverb, turn off my pedal. And you can see we can use a little more gain first. And we can use a little more around, I think I use this one here. Turn this up a little bit. We can also use a little bit more here. Very similar. So I think this would work. You can see here around 4 dB and around almost 12 dB of 180 Hertz. So I would like to have this in this file already because now it's a little bit too thin. I create another audio file. Call it new IR. And now I go back. I'm looking for my Hardwire RV7 sample. Put it here. Fade it out a little bit. Now I will choose an EQ here. And I will only increase the frequencies that we just chose, like 180, something like this. But I won't increase the gain because every device will generate another volume of the gain, so I just keep it like this. Let's hear how this sounds now. Before it sounded like this. don't go in the red area here. So that's fine. I will save this again, export this, and then we try the same thing again. I paste it into my convolution reverb IR folder. So now it should be here. Here it is. Now I take off the EQ and I also take out the gain. So this is what we get now. Let's see if this works. Let's compare this to the pedal. Turn this off, and I just turned on the pedal. A little bit warmer, I guess. But very similar, very similar. Original signal, and now the new one. I think we made a very good convolution reverb sound of the Hardwire RV7 now. Yeah, let's see how this sounds in the poly reverb effects. I will try the same thing now for my amp. I love my Fender and I want to have the same sound in the Beebo by Poly Effects. Yeah, but before we go on, I want to introduce you to today's video's sponsor, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including writing, learning guitar, music production, photography, animation and more. You can explore new skills, deepen passions and get lost in your creativity. No matter if you're a beginner or professional, there's something interesting for everyone. For example, there's a really interesting course called Sound Design in UX, an introduction for designers, by audio UX designer Henry Daw, who created famous sounds for Nokia and Microsoft. Everything on my channel is about music and sound design. Well-crafted sound can trigger, move, inspire and even influence our mood and decisions. Sound design is so interesting. In his course, Henry Daw created a perfect starting point for everyone who wants to learn the key factors behind good UX sound and become more aware of the importance of sound in our everyday life. Another course that looks really interesting and fun is GarageBand iOS for iPhone and iPad, The Complete Beginner's Guide by Mike Barners. In this course you can learn everything about the intelligent music tools of GarageBand, including songwriting and basic music production. Musician and music instructor Mike gives you everything that you need to make professional songs wherever you are and without owning expensive music gear. If you're an iOS user and you would like to discover your hidden songwriting and music production abilities, this course may be exactly what you're looking for. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, which means that it's completely ad-free and they're always launching new classes. If you're interested in trying out Skillshare, the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description below will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare Premium. And now let's make an IR for an amp. So this time I need a jack cable, a microphone and an XLR cable. I place my microphone at the position that feels best for me, and yeah, I turn on the record button here. Monitor is on in. This time the audio signal comes from only one channel, the XLR cable, because we do a mono recording here. Then here I use the mono channel, mono to stereo. I leave the amp exactly minus 20 dB as before, and I use only 1 second of IR time. We don't have a reverb tail here, it's more of the very dry characteristic of the amp. We have to make sure that the amp is not too loud, because the audio interface will probably send you a warning message that the signal is too loud. Even my talking can cause a signal here. It shows very low volume on my amp, because my amp is already super loud, and now we just check how the frequency sounds. We save it. Now I save it in the caps folder. I will save it like this: Fender Princeton 112 Plus with an SM58 microphone. Save this. Then I generate a new audio. I just call it edit. I take this new one. There's always a latency when you record something from your interface, so I have to use the earliest signal here. I will blend it out a little bit. You can also hear a little bit how my room sounded, because the microphone also grabs the room signal. I want to put this IR into my Poly Beebo effect pedal in the end. I will export this file, mono, export, and now let's see what happens. So to have the best comparison as I can get here, I connected the microphone that records the amp with my audio interface, and I also connected the output of the Beebo by Poly effects to another input of my audio interface. I can send any distortion pedal into the input of the Beebo by Poly effects, set up my mono simulation cap here and send it out to the audio interface, and at the same time I can also send the input signal with the distortion to another output, to output 3 for example, and I can connect with another jack cable this output 3 to my amp. It's a little bit like a loop connection that allows me to send the first signal to the simulated amp and the other signal to the real amp. And yeah, let's see what happens. So what's the difference? To me it sounds super similar, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Now let's further extend the capabilities of the Beebo by Poly effects. This time I want to create a very classic shoegaze sound by having the reverse reverb in front of my distortion pedal. To do this I have to create a loop. So I connect my guitar directly to input 1 of the Beebo and send the input through the convolution reverb to output 3. With another patch cable I go from output 3 of the Beebo to the input of my Thrashmaster and send the signal from its output to input 3 of the Beebo. From there I can now go into my IR cap simulation using a stereo cap. This time it has 2 outputs. This is actually like I would use 2 of my amps that we just made an IR of. So this is super exciting. Let's see how this sounds. Yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you like my impulse responses and you also want to get my personal presets for effect pedals like the HX Stomp XL, the Poly Beebo or the Zoom MS-70 CDR, you can do this on my Patreon page by becoming a member of the band. You would really support me with this. You can also support this channel by buying some merchandise like t-shirts and sweaters with my personal designs from my Spring store. I leave you the links in the description below. If you like this content, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to share love or want to tell me something interesting, please let me know in the comments below. I'm always happy to read your thoughts. It would also help this video to get recommended to more people who may be interested in the same topic. Thanks for watching and I hope I see you next time. See you later.